and welcome. It's nearly 9:30 p.m. here in Seoul. I'm Ji-young, bringing you more of our special live coverage of the third Summit for Democracy, being hosted by South Korea this week to defend and promote freedom, human rights, and prosperity amid the fast-evolving digital era. Under the theme of democracy for the future generation, the event's primary focus is fostering the voices of young people on democracy. It's a three-day summit independently hosted for the first time outside the United States and at a time when South Korea's general election is coming up in April. Now it looks like the session is starting, so let's go live to the scene.
Misinformation and disinformation. First, we will have an opening remarks from President Yoon Suk-yeol of Korea, who's chairing the session. Dear Excellencies and global citizens who support democracy, I would like to welcome you to Session 2 under the theme of technology, elections, and misinformation and disinformation. Today, the world is facing an unprecedented public crisis. Even before the wounds of the COVID-19 pandemic have healed, geopolitical conflicts are raging in various parts of the world, and the climate crisis is deepening the food and energy crisis globally. In addition, the rise of authoritarianism in many parts of the world is challenging the democracy that we have all defended. Dear Excellencies, in 1965, Intel co-founder Gordon Moore made the intriguing claim that the performance of semiconductors doubles every 2 years. As predicted by Moore's law, the world is developing at a rapid pace that the humanity has never experienced before. New products and services using artificial intelligence and big data keep emerging in our markets. And so now our lives are becoming more convenient. But on the other hand, we are also experiencing unexpected side effects. In particular, the indiscriminate spread of fake news and manipulated information using AI and internet bot technology is emerging as a global problem. Fake news and disinformation, which is systematically produced and distributed by certain forces, goes beyond simply spreading misinformation, but it also causes social conflicts and division. Also, fake news threatens elections, which are the foundation of democracy, by inciting people to make wrong decisions based on information that is not true. This is a clear provocation and challenge against democracy. This year is a super election year where more than a third of the global population will cast their votes. Dear Excellencies, democracies that share common values must be united, and we need to respond to fake news and disinformation together. Our responsibility to safeguard the foundations of democracy through fair elections is greater than ever. We need to work together to establish laws and regulations to deal with disinformation and misinformation strictly. In particular, international cooperation is needed to strictly enforce relevant laws to keep foreign forces from influencing the election processes of other countries. We also need solidarity and sharing of technology to defend our democracy. We need to build AI and digital systems that can detect and combat those who use AI and digital technologies to create fake news and spread disinformation. If malicious disinformation and fake news still do not stop, then we need to carry out strong and systematic anti-propaganda campaigns together. Excellencies, the promotion of democracy in the world can never be achieved by the power of any single nation. We need to continue to strengthen and expand solidarity among democracies that share universal values. To this end, the Republic of Korea will closely work together with governments, international organizations, and private sector partners. In particular, we will continue to build on the achievements of the 3 summits for democracy, and we will join forces with our partners in the international community to firmly defend our democracy from misinformation and disinformation. With that, I would now like to invite the participating leaders to deliver their remarks on the topic of Session 2. I thank you all for your valuable contribution. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from the Prime Minister of Japan.
I would like to pay tribute to the government of the Republic of Korea for hosting the 3rd Summit for Democracy and to President Yoon for chairing this leaders' plenary. Democratic institutions and forms of democracy vary from country to country and time to time, and we are still searching for how democracy should be. Democracy should be diverse. However, we must not lose sight of its essence. It should be equipped with legal mechanisms that respect the will of the majority and at the same time defend the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals and minorities. Equality before the law to guarantee those rights and freedoms and free and fair elections are also crucial aspects. Japan reiterates the importance of democratic principles and the underlying spirit of tolerance, cooperation, and compromise. Furthermore, we also need to address challenges to these principles in the online information space that new technologies opened up to us. The development of the internet and social media platforms has given human beings access to a wide variety of information and avenues for expression. Information that was once limited in access is now instantly available from a smartphone in your hand. On the other hand, such developments have also made it easy to express and disseminate slanders and insults to others, and discriminatory speech and behavior directed at people of a certain ethnic or national origin are broadly referred to as hate speech. This could result in exchanges of accusations and silencing of people's voice, creating divisions in society and preventing healthy debate and discussion, which is essential for democracy. We need a stronger response. As free and fair elections are the foundation of democracy, it is essential that voters are able to make decisions of their own free will based on necessary and sufficient information in an environment where the freedom of expression is guaranteed.
However, there is a risk of AI-generated deepfakes and spoofed audio, making it difficult to distinguish between true and false information and hindering people's political self-determination, and thereby destabilizing and disrupting society. To address these risks, Japan is also advancing discussions on technologies against disinformation and misinformation by AI at the AI Strategy Council. In addition, we are also looking into comprehensive measures in areas such as addressing how digital platform operators should respond to the challenges and how to improve digital media literacy among the general public. The spread of disinformation is a challenge common to all countries and requires common understanding and collaboration at the international level. Japan launched the Hiroshima AI process last year as the G7 presidency and led the discussion on generative AI. The process successfully formulated the international guiding principles and code of conduct. Going forward, this initiative could be expanded beyond the G7. Last October, in order to share knowledge on measures against disinformation in the region, Japan also hosted the Internet Governance Forum for the first time. In this forum, measures against disinformation and misinformation were discussed, and the existing practices against disinformation document was published with good practices of countermeasures against disinformation taken in various countries. We will continue to work with the international community to defend universal values, including democracy, while enjoying the benefits of technology. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now, the Prime Minister of Canada.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking President Yoon of the Republic of Korea for hosting this third Summit for Democracy. It's an important time. Thank you for leading on this, my friend. I also want to thank Prime Minister Kishida for his words, and it's great to see so many other friends committed to democracy at this session right now. It's good to see you all this morning. On est ici aujourd'hui afin de réaffirmer notre volonté de bâtir des démocraties solides et des institutions résilientes. This conversation is especially important right now because, as Sukyul pointed out, 2024 will be the biggest election year in history, with countries representing more than half the world's population going to the polls. Unfortunately, many of these elections are unlikely to meet the criteria of what academic experts would view as free and fair. In Russia, the recent presidential election was stacked in favor of the current leader. But for those of us who do run free and fair elections, we have to continue our work to improve our democracies. For example, earlier today, discussions around the importance of inclusion and youth empowerment will hopefully lead to more young people participating in their communities and countries. We're all facing a series of challenges, new and old. We're still reeling from a pandemic that put immense pressure on our democracies. We're seeing growing distrust of government and media and increased polarization exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation. We're dealing with insecurity caused by armed conflicts and climate change. So today, I'm announcing that Canada is investing $8.4 million on research across the global south to better understand how climate change interacts with democratic decline. These initiatives will also help protect the human rights of environmental defenders. On top of the uncertainty caused by different crises, we're also seeing direct threats to individuals globally through transnational repression. This is why Canada is increasing and expanding its funding for Access Now to ensure human rights defenders and others facing digital threats have the resources they need to protect themselves. En cette époque déterminante, on doit redoubler d'efforts pour affronter les menaces contre la démocratie, incluant la mésinformation et la désinformation. On information integrity, governments can lead the way and be more proactive in strengthening citizen resilience. The Global Declaration on Information Integrity Online is a Canadian contribution to protecting and promoting a healthy information ecosystem. It is a concrete step towards the development of international norms as it lays out high-level commitments for governments. The declaration also invites industry to enhance transparency in advertising, algorithm, and content moderation processes. Disinformation is often used by foreign actors who want to interfere in the domestic affairs of other states. To identify and respond to foreign threats to democracies, Canada leads the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism, which we created back in 2018 when we hosted the G7 that year. In the context of Russia's war in Ukraine, the mechanism has enabled rapid information sharing and collaboration to address Russian disinformation, which includes state-sponsored disinformation around Ukrainian children abductions and the proliferation of automated networks that amplify pro-Russian narratives. Disinformation and threats to information integrity are not new. But with new technology like generative AI, we're concerned about the spread of disinformation at an unprecedented scale. More guardrails will be needed, and they'll need to be transparent and themselves grounded in democratic values and norms. Pour ce qui est de l'intelligence artificielle, il nous faudra davantage de mesures de protection, des mesures qui devront être transparentes et fondées sur des valeurs et des normes démocratiques. My friends, in democracies, we know there's always more work to be done. Democracy didn't happen by accident, and it won't continue without effort. So once again, I want to thank my friend, President Yoon, for all his hard work in promoting strong and healthy democracies, not just with this summit, but with his ongoing work around the world. Merci, mes amis. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you very much. Up next is the President of Bulgaria.
Your Excellency, President Yoon Suk-yeol, dear colleagues. First, let me express my gratitude to the Republic of Korea for organizing this timely forum. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. There is no doubt that the development of modern information and communication technologies expands our economic potential, but also carries certain threats to democracies. Threats that we, the democratic leaders, are bound to consider and prevent. In the context of the current multiple geopolitical challenges and the general destabilization of the international legal order, social media can easily turn into a weapon of war by allowing malicious parties to interfere in the political dynamics of targeted democratic countries. Like many other countries, Bulgaria is also exposed to such threats. Despite the fact that we have a well-developed IT business sector, our public fora are still vulnerable to the spread of disinformation and fake news. This poses a risk to the integrity of the national democratic process. The reasons behind are complex, but I believe that in order to make our society more resilient to disinformation, we need to enhance public trust in democratic institutions, to increase digital literacy, and to secure social inclusion for vulnerable social groups. With these goals in mind, we have already supported a number of important initiatives. Within the framework of the European Union, we welcome the adoption of the European Democracy Action Plan and of the European Media Freedom Act. This new legislation will provide strong safeguards to media freedom and the right of information in the EU member states by protecting editorial independence, the independent functioning of the public service media, and strengthening the transparency of media ownership. Bringing the relevant national regulations and practices in line with the European Media Freedom Act should be a high priority for us in the next months. Domestically, Bulgaria has also taken some important steps to secure media freedom, namely by certain legislative amendments, reducing any undue pressure on journalists. We have still a long way to go before ensuring sustainable media freedom. However, I think that a step in the right direction has been made. Technologies, however, can also serve as a tool of strengthened democracy, especially when used to facilitate the electoral process. Traditionally, in Bulgarian elections, there has been a significant share of invalid ballots. In the 2014 parliamentary elections, 6% of the casted votes were invalid. And this share grew to 15% in the local elections 5 years later. Since 2019, the Parliament introduced machine voting as an alternative in the polling stations above 300 voters. 2 years later, machine voting became the sole form of voting in those stations. In this way, the share of invalid ballots dropped to less than 1%, and the election results became more accurate. In 2022, the Bulgarian Parliament voted another significant amendment to the legislative rules and procedures by allowing video recording and online video streaming to the ballots count after closing the polling stations. Hence, the transparency of the vote counting process had been enhanced. We anticipate that this still and will generally lead to an increase of public trust in the election results and reduce the likelihood of electoral law violations. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that strengthening our democracy does not require only legislative measures. It should also rely on comprehensive strategy to overcome poverty and social exclusion, which includes raising the educational level of vulnerable social groups and improving the quality of accessible education. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, President. Up next is the President of Botswana.
Your Excellency, President Yoon Suk Yeol of South Korea, fellow panelists, heads of delegation, a very good evening. Let me begin by first congratulating President Yoon Suk Yeol of South Korea for hosting this third summit, Democracy Summit of Democracy Summit of the leaders in South Korea. I'd like to begin by stating that I, speaking from Botswana, a country that is the oldest and longest running democracy, multi-party democracy in Africa, represent but a voice of many democracies throughout Africa. And we acknowledge readily, as others have, that this year, 2024, presents an opportunity wherein 4.2 billion of the world's population will be subjected to an electoral process that is democratic and will yield leaders of various shapes and forms. But coming to the subject of the topic, technology, elections, and disinformation, it's important to point out earlier on that we're presented with mixed opportunities and mixed challenges because of where we are in our digital transformation processes. First is the very fact that we have advanced in our digital technology developments across the globe presents opportunity for very many more people to participate, very many more people to be reached, and very many more people to be exposed to the risks of disinformation or misinformation. And therefore, the burden of responsibility placed on all of us, as is required of any credible leader, is to build trust in the systems that we adopt, is to embellish credibility and integrity in the systems that we develop and use. And the authenticity of such trust and credibility yields stability and confidence in the system. If these are broadened by the application of communication technology, if these are allowed to prevail by the ease of access to such technology, which speaks to the rights of the voter, it enhances, it deepens our democratic dispensation. Anything that might undermine such trust is a direct assault on the potential for democracy to yield the very stability, the trust that we all yearn for. And so my plea for this conference to consider and deliberate upon is that we, particularly in the Global South, we, the young democracies, we, the underdeveloped in terms of our technology systems, do receive some empathetic assistance, support, protection, and help to make sure that we can ring-fence the integrity of our democratic systems, particularly to stabilize our countries. For if we do not, we risk the very values that bring us together. And so I welcome this summit, which should turn into a coalition of like-minded, and hopefully will provide an opportunity for a resetting of affirmation of the values that we all subscribe to. And by that, it would require that we invest in every form in ensuring that our digital systems, our digital platforms reach as many, are applied by as many, and are stabilized for the sake of stabilizing democratic dispensation. Democracy is fragile, and technology should never be used as a tool to threaten democracy. It requires all of us to empower our citizens, to ensure that we regulate these systems, we capacitate our institutions and systems, we innovate continuously, we sophisticate, we make sure our people participate, and we share in building this unbreakable coalition of a commitment to the values of the like-minded in defense and protection of democracy. In Botswana, I'm pleased to inform you that as we gravitate to the 2024 elections in October of this year, we are rock solid in our commitment to making sure that our democracy is defended. I thank you. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Now we have the President of Lithuania.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the third summit for democracy comes at the time of war in Europe, as well as of intensifying disruptions globally. For the third year already, Russia is waging a brutal war against Ukraine. This international crime of aggression has caused a humanitarian, environmental, and moral disaster. It also represents a major threat to global security. Yet nowadays, no war is confined to the battlefield. We see that in Ukraine, where technology blurs the lines between the physical and the virtual. Aggression has also easily spreads across borders via modern communication channels, making every supporter of Ukraine a target. Russia's main goal to weaken the foundations of democracy globally has not changed for at least 2 decades. And Russia is not alone. There are other international actors with the same aim. Right now, we see a clear line separating the free world from those wishing to destroy it. Not only physical threats, but also the stream of propaganda and misinformation is constantly seeking to get inside. In recent decades, virtually every democratic society has become a target of hybrid warfare. Malicious cyber activities, disruptive technologies, and troll factories on social media help to create parallel realms of distorted reality. These efforts notably intensify whenever democratic elections are approaching. Our ability to engage in free and fair elections has always been our great strength. Nonetheless, there is also an inherent fragility in every single democratic system. Everything relies on citizens and their confidence in democratic institutions. To erode this confidence is to undermine democracy. Or so many autocrats think, rushing to exploit our vulnerabilities. This year, almost half of the global population will cast their votes in elections. Lithuania is one of them. Not only our national, but also European elections are at stake. Our institutions are already monitoring foreign hostile activities. To withstand the pressure, we will once again rely both on society's resilience and united institutional efforts. On a global level, a resolute response is also needed. Democracies must work together to expose, counter, and ultimately defeat efforts to undermine the foundations of our free and open societies. Be it Russia or any other actor, we cannot allow them to manipulate or eventually capture our institutions. We must strengthen our cybersecurity defenses and invest in technological solutions for countering disinformation. Ultimately, the strength of democracy lies in the resilience of our people. Thus, we should consolidate our human and technical resources to effectively counter hostile threats. Democracy, free and fair elections, and trust in governance should be defended at all costs. This, I believe, is our shared goal and our duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the President of Estonia.
Your Excellency, President Yoon, thank you very much for hosting this summit. Distinguished audience, in a world marked by discord, rapid change and conflicts, democracy stands as a beacon of hope for humanity. As democracy, with its foundation in the power of the people, remains a fundamental expression of human rights and dignity, offering a path towards peace, progress, and prosperity. We have argued that at the end of history, democracy is inevitable, but we are not yet there. A war in Europe has showed us that there are aggressive anti-democratic forces at work whose aim is to destroy our values, our way of life, and collapse the world into spheres of influence. We see authoritarian regimes tightening their grip on power, suppressing, even killing dissents, and trampling on the rights of the citizens. A range of anti-democratic narratives from chauvinism to the far right amplify each other with the backing of authoritarian governments. Therefore, it is important to unite behind the cause of democracy, as we cannot take freedoms it provides for granted. For this, it's utmost important to clearly demonstrate that we protect one another, fight for our values, and support our like-minded friends. Alliances are what democracies do best. Authoritarian regimes have never been effective in cultivating equal alliances. Cooperation with others for them has been need-based as opposed to value-based. The democratic world does it better. It is our strength. Now it is time to use that strength so that freedom and security will be guaranteed for Ukrainians and all democratic nations. If we fail in this, democracy will decline and darkest times lie ahead of us. Only in alliance can we remain strong enough to fight the challenges put in our way by aggressive autocratic actors. Dear colleagues, democracy is resilient, but it requires an unwavering commitment and support. The toolbox of our adversaries has changed. We must find ways to effectively fight against the changed nature of anti-democratic actors. As mentioned already, this year, billions of people will head to the polls to decide on who they elect as the leaders. We have observed the manipulations of invasion space during election periods. By manipulating the voters, one can influence public opinion and the outcome of elections at an unprecedented scale. With the rise of large social media platforms, there are new avenues to circulate propaganda and spread misinformation. Malicious actors have exploited the algorithms of social media platforms to amplify divisive content, spread conspiracy theories targeting specific demographics, and undermine trust in democratic institutions. Fake accounts and automated bots can artificially inflate the reach and impact of certain narratives, making it difficult for users to separate fact from fiction. This erosion of trust in the information ecosystem undermines the integrity of democratic process. It is especially worrying when these campaigns are launched by foreign actors. Addressing the complex interplay between technology, politics, and information warfare requires a collaboration between governments, tech companies, civil society organizations, and academic researchers. Only through collective action can we hope to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process and preserve the health of democratic societies in the digital age. Estonia uses many avenues to remedy these problems. First, we provide proper education regarding the threats in the online world, starting from the kindergarten. Secondly, we fight the disinformation through initiatives and coalitions with other like-minded actors. The Media Freedom Coalition and the Freedom Online Coalition are examples, to name just a few. I would like to emphasize that technology has no ill intentions. It is people. Technology can work for our advantage and provide tools to guard against misinformation. It can be used to strengthen democracies, enhance civic engagement, to amplify voices of marginalized communities, and increase transparency. Honored audience, democracy must not be a privilege reserved for a select few, but a right inherent to our humanity, and we must continue fighting for this right by creating trust in democracy and its power to tackle the challenges the world is facing. In a world where democracies are under attack, democratic nations must reaffirm our commitment to protecting democracy by supporting each other. Thank you.
Gambia.
Your Excellency, Yoon, President of the Republic of Korea, Excellencies, Head of State and Government, Excellencies, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Excellencies, Heads of Institutional Organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I thank President Yoon Suk-yeol for inviting me to participate in this important summit. The objectives of the summit accord perfectly with our resolve to promote a strong spirit of interdependence anchored on shared values. This approach offers our countries an even pathway to address relevant challenges. Democracy, the theme of the summit, provides a solid basis to build and establish the effective value systems we have committed ourselves for our progress and prosperity. Thus, the focus on democracy gives us the opportunity to redirect our commitment to promoting effective participatory governance. For us in the Gambia, democratic governance is a valuable means of creating sustainable peace, security, and development. As a result, my government is committed to preserving our democratic gains following the return of democratic governance to the country in 2016. Excellencies, recent political trends and challenges make it necessary for democratic societies to constantly create platforms to promote shared values. Such platforms should be driven by a strong determination to jointly address developments of common interests. Sensitive to this and being responsive to the aspirations of our people, the Gambia government allows for suitable platforms to fulfill our obligations. Excellencies, the continual transformation of the information technology landscape and the socio-economic trends that unfold have implications for the legitimacy of democratic governance. Spreading malicious content, for example, to incite sentiments against democratically elected governments and the credibility of state institutions is a global reality. To offset this, my government has expanded the regulatory space for easy access to credible information, and we accommodate dissenting voices and devise legitimate political participation. Unfortunately, in Africa, we now have to confront a troubling occurrence thought to have faded away. The rise in unconstitutional change of government is a major concern again. This makes the narrative on democratic governance exceedingly significant. As a member of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, the Gambia will not relent in finding ways of curbing social political threats to peace and stability. Relatedly, therefore, it is essential that the positive impact of intercivilizational dialogue and migration features in our discourse. Excellencies, the Gambia's development and democratic progress are inseparable. Accordingly, besides successfully holding credible national elections, a conducive environment exists that supports the pillars to sustain democratic governance. They include a free press. Taking this agenda further, a national dialogue was successfully held recently. It provided a broad-based forum to examine our governance status and propose recommendations. The process has been institutionalized as an annual event, and we will decentralize it nationwide. This initiative is to foster popular participation in governance matters and the implementation of process of the Gambia Recovery Focused National Development Plan 2023-2027. We welcome partnerships in this endeavor. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Now we will hear from the President of Finland.
Thank you very much, President Yoon, for the invitation. It's a great privilege to be here. I'm looking at my experienced colleagues, and I feel a little bit like I'm the new kid on the block. I was elected President of Finland and entered office only 2.5 weeks ago. Now, some of you might have seen that Finland was ranked as the happiest country in the world for the 7th year running. I would, of course, like to see a clear correlation between my election and the level of happiness in Finland, but unfortunately, that would be misinformation and fake news, because empirical evidence for our happiness was gathered much before the elections. And to be honest, I think the main reason why we are that is that we are a vibrant democracy, ranking #1 in the Freedom Index. I'm also very proud of the way in which our elections here in Finland were conducted. The reason for that is I felt that they were fair, free, and very respectful. I mean, the President of Finland is basically in charge together with the government on foreign policy, and because we live next to an aggressive neighbor in the form of Russia, for us foreign policy is existential, and that's why a lot of people are respectful in the debate. Now, I wanted to make 2 comments and 1 suggestion today, because of course our topic is democracy, technology, election, and mis- and disinformation. My first point is about digital democracy versus digital dictatorship. I'm sure many of us were rather idealistic with the onslaught of technological development, especially in the post-Cold War era. We felt that after the Soviet Union collapsed and the Cold War ended, we would see a world which would see democracies mushrooming, left, right, and center. And to a certain extent, in the beginning, it was like that. We also felt that technology could be used for the good. Even social media. Remember in the beginning, Facebook and Twitter, they were seen very much as the instruments for getting people mobilized, whether it was the Arab Spring or otherwise. But I think the cold reality is that technology can also be used for bad. It can be used for surveillance. It can be used for dictatorships. We saw that, especially during COVID. We see that it can be used as an instrument of control. And that's why I think it's very important that we in democracies learn how to use technology in the right way for the benefit of us all and for freedom. Now, my second point is quite simple, and that is to say that I think in democracy we have a problem. And the best way in which I've seen it explained is with a behavior psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a book called Thinking Slow and Thinking Fast. In that, he has a system 1 brain and system 2 brain. So system 1 is basically very quick, reactive, and emotional, where system 2 is contemplating, slow, reflective, and compromise seeking. And my argument is that democracy was actually created for system 2. The founding fathers in the United States and those who wrote the democratic constitutions that we hadn't prepared us for a world where disinformation, misinformation, and fake news can be spread so quickly and can quickly go out of control. So my argument is that we have to adapt to this new world, because if we do not have a basic understanding of facts and information, we cannot have democratic discourse. And we see that challenge in a lot of our democracies today. And here, to finish off, is my humble recommendation. Summits of democracy, I think, are great. I learned and listened to many of our colleagues today. But I think it would be useful for us to get a set of recommendations which we could look at on how to work on the interconnection between democracy and technology. So basically a report or a to-do list where we look at the problems that technology gives us in form of disinformation, misinformation, and the challenges, and then what kind of solutions we could have. Because to be honest, I think democracy is still the best way and the best form of governance, as long as it is free, equal, and supports justice. It's been great listening to all of my colleagues today, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. In closing, we will now turn back to the President of the Republic of Korea. Dear Excellencies, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you for sharing your valuable thoughts on how to create better democracy for future generations under the theme of technology, election, and disinformation and misinformation. During the session, we had broad discussions on the impact of emerging technologies on our election processes and democracy, and we had discussions on ways to cooperate to respond to them. Through today's heated discussions, I was able to reaffirm our shared desire for a future where freedoms and human rights are respected, and where peace and prosperity abound. I'm also convinced that if democracies work together in solidarity and cooperation in the fields of law, institutions, and science and technology, we can overcome new challenges of democracy, such as disinformation and fake news. I hope that we will continue to pool our wisdom together to use AI and technologies as a lever to promote democracy and progress and prevent them from threatening our democracy. And to ensure that our efforts bear fruit, the Republic of Korea will continue to work closely with the international community, and we will actively support relevant activities by the private sector. I look forward to in-depth discussions on democracy in the following sessions as well. Thank you very much for your valuable participation and contribution in session 2. Thank you. We would like to express our gratitude to the leaders of each country for attending the session. With that, we conclude session 2.
Well, that concludes our special coverage tonight of the Third Democracy Summit being held in Seoul, hosted independently for the first time outside the United States. This year, world leaders focused on countering digital threats to democracy for the younger generation. And the efforts to defend democracy continue. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 9 a.m. Korea time tomorrow with New Day at Arirang. Good night.